So much for coming, and thank you very much to the Foreside Community Church for hosting us this evening. It was very generous of them to open their doors to this event. And I wanted to just say at the beginning that I gave a reading recently in Minneapolis at the church that we were at there. And I described myself as an unabashed, unapologetic, unregenerate pagan. I worship at the altar, at Earth's altar, and my chalice right now are the crocuses, crocus chalices, and but I would not be here if I had not had a chapter of my life that was deeply embedded in Christianity. And so I have reverence and respect for that part of my life, and it weaves itself into my current life. I always like to begin with the season. This is my very favorite time of the year. It's just stunning. I was just in Connecticut last week, and something wonderful and terrible is happening down there right now, which is, it's not happening here. Everything bloomed at once. The apple trees are blooming. They usually don't bloom until the end of May. And this is hard on the birds because the birds expect the insects that the apple trees attract. So it's part of global warming, but I have to say, it was incredibly glorious. So the first poem I'm going to read is from my book called, I wanted to introduce myself to you. This book is my most current book, and I'll be reading from this later. But I wanted, some of you don't know me, and this book is sort of a departure from my other work. So I wanted to read a few things that give you an idea of the other things that I write. So this book is from a book called One-Breasted Woman. I had a case of breast cancer. And am I not lucky to be standing here 24 years later to talk about it? I am deeply grateful. But any of you who've had cancer or other things that bring death really close, it had some rewards. One of which was I got very serious about publishing my writing. That was the thing that really gave me a good old cancer kick in the pants. So this poem is called Passementary. And passementary is an old-fashioned word. I love it. It's many syllables. And if you weren't ever introduced to it or don't remember, it's all that stuff like rick-rack and fringe and all the stuff that decorates things. Passementary. Even those whose taste inclines to simple lines, free of ornamentation, would be hard-pressed to resist the embellishments of peak April. The whole outdoors is a notions showroom, an emporium of trim. The trees are sprigged with mini green gold pom-poms rah-rahing spring, hung with thousands of dangling tassels. In sun, in gusts, glitzy new leaves or dazzling spangles, sprinkling passers-by with fairy dust. Redbud limbs are bedizened with blue-pink piping. Pears, apples, azaleas, crabs, cherries, lilacs, rhodies fluff up their pastel furbelows. What a flouncing bevy, what primping and prinking. Green again lawns are fairly lamade. Gold braid frames each brick of the walkway. Only on high is such orphrey used for paving, and drying sidewalks are silvered with ruching, a gallooning of rain. The elm indulges in frilly millinery amid the frippery of constant birdsong. Over the scrolling of fancy unfurling ferns, the all stops out displays the appliques of tulip, daffodil, hyacinth, iris. It's a bit much, all this gimp and fringe, for those with a minimalist tendency. It's over the top gaudy, très outré, just plain frou-frou. But for those who have been stripped, whose prospects are slim, prognosis questionable, we glory in this garishment. We're just tickled. It's thrilling that I have a lot of members of my really home community from Great Cranberry Island here tonight. I grew up moving every 2 years, and I never really felt that I had a home until I came. I literally felt it right away when I stepped onto the island, but then I got to know the people, and well, that was, the beauty in the people. And so I've written 3 books about that. I can't stop myself. I'm working on the 4th, 3, did I say 3? 3 books, working on the 4th. Can't stop celebrating it. And this is from my first book, Tabernacle Poems of an Island. Paying homage, any August, Cranberry Isles. Up here, when the sky is clear as it was the first day, and vetch raises purple slubs on the homespun throw of the field, when waves range across the western way like azure herds, and even trunks of evergreens are anointed with sun, when gulls stitch the hours together with their dips and yucks, and the rattling air warns that our time is almost up, and never enough, never enough. It feels as though the great whatever it is has come to call, and I have to drop everything, books, pots, the vacuum, the phone, and go out to meet it. But with what? How can I ever be an adequate host? I burn words onto a page that go up as nothing but smoke, and bow to the breeze that freshens my sheets, folding them slow and solemn as altar cloths. Down an aisle lined with spruces, over the plush pile of their needles, with their incense cleansing my lungs, I reach the cove and give up trying for an in-kind response, confessing that I'm unequal to this horizon, undulant with mountains, blushing hard in yet another shade of love. And I'm finally still enough to hear the slup of the tide rising against the rocks. I sit on one, giving thanks for the huge, smooth, speckled pink egg of it that holds me up, and brood over the changing face of the waters. So you see, I did have biblical influences there. I don't know whether you know the work of Edvard Munch, the Norwegian painter, and you may know his painting Melancholy on the Beach, and it's there's a man with his sort of brooding profile, but in the background is a beach. And that spoke to me of the homeness of this island for me. Grief's progress. When you finally find home, it's safe, at last, to be sad, though you'd rather snap out of it. You know that the walls of this place will hold you, and you won't be left. You can go out front and sit on the shore. It understands gulf. It understands loss and erosion. Remember yourself as a child, racing from school to them with your trophies. Their silence, they're turning away from you to fight. At night, shivering in your bed, their awful explosions, merciless, relentless as a blitz. Pour your tears into the ocean. In time, the sea heals everything. Swabbing and swabbing, your glass heart ground by the waves into sand. A smooth, glittering expanse that lifts into the sky and calls you. Another shore, whose cities of stars invite you into their streets to dance. And that poem will also occur in a new memoir that I've just finished after 40 years of work. It only took 40 years. But a memoir about my family. There was a lot of trouble in my family, a lot of violence. And so I just wanted to read a poem that sort of relates to that one, and that's all I'll say about this particular part of my work. But this poem recently appeared in the Press Herald in the Deepwater column. Red Geraniums. In spring, my mother managed to take a break from her despond, long enough to get a couple of red geraniums in terracotta pots. Was the acrid smell of them strong enough to cut, if only briefly, through her gloom? And the red was so red, so red. Was it effigy for the life she might have led, the inner vibrance that once was hers, for the strength she wished she had to break from my dad, his beatings, his dames, his gin, as well as her own bourbon and vermouth? Maybe she hoped the force of their odor and color could act as catalyst, or perhaps they were just the only indulgence afforded her then. She set them out on the tiny porch of our cramped bankruptcy pad. Did she even water them once? The velvety, elegant, crenellated, burgundy-banded leaves yellowed, fallen from the stems, shriveled crimson. When I told a friend of this, she said, "Now I understand why you need to garden the way you do." Gardening is very healing, as some of you that I know understand completely. And this, the other, aspect of the island are the people. And I've written a lot of eulogies for members of our community that have gone on, and I will always miss them. Luckily, I wrote this one before the person that it's celebrating died, so she got to see it. But on our island, there was a wonderful woman, Polly Bunker, who had a shop called the Whale's Rib, and she sold all kinds of things in there. And it was a little house about a tenth the size of this room. And if you stayed in there, 15 minutes, you might not see very much. If you stayed in there half an hour, you'd find all kinds of stuff that you didn't see the first time around. And but the truth is that people bought things there because they wanted to buy them from her. She was so wonderful. So I had to do something to celebrate her. And before I left for Minneapolis then, when I went back home, she would always say to me, she'd give a sigh and say, "Where has summer gone?" So that's the title. This is in her voice. "Why, weren't but yesterday I set them begonias out. People ask me how they got so full of blossom. I say, I guess they just got excited. A whole power load of customers just came right in. How they do take on when they see all I got. Arlene's quilts, them funny little rings that light up when you press them. Pick me clean. I'm all in. Wish to goodness I had some of those smoked mussels. I could eat them can and all. Nothing left much but one of these shirts. They couldn't believe, yes, I designed them myself. The swoop of dolphins and the little different color fish surprising on the back. Aren't those cunning bars of soap shaped like rocks? About now, I get to missing Tud. He'd scythe the brush out back. Anybody use a scythe anymore? I get such a lonely feeling, winter coming on. I see those empty houses. Oh, where has summer gone? Passed us right by. Did we have any sun? No sooner warm than it commences fog. I do have one wool sweater left, even knit. Might be your size. Seems as though it's your color. Try it on. Dressing room's that space over there behind the door. And why don't you just take these earrings? Here, I'll wrap them up in this lavender paper. How they do sparkle. Just take them. No charge. Every little ache, I wonder, is that the cancer again? My poppies are all but done. What a woman. I dedicated this book in part to her because we had cancer at the same time. And we became friends through cancer. I mean, we were already sort of friends, but we became real friends through cancer. I read a lot about flowers. I have a whole book called Dropping into the Flower. I'm not going to read from that, but I can't stop loving them. And I'm kind of compulsive about making bouquets. It's one of those things you can't stop yourself from doing, you know. Everybody has something like that. I'm sure you do too. And I thought to ask myself, what the heck am I doing here? So this poem is about that. Why do I labor to grow over 20 species just for cutting, and fuss so over the arranging, making sure salvian blue punctuates calendula's yellow, or dahlia's purple reigns over subjects of zinnia red and marigold orange, playing assiduously too with monochromes of white and pink, for quickly most will fade or droop? Why do I give so many away, gathering a summer's day as if it could be kept, as if these offerings could reduce pain, restore health, their vibrant colors thrust in the face of death, saying to those I care for, stay, stay. Feast your eyes on us and bust this all we've got moment wide as the heavens. I am thrilled that the person that this poem is dedicated to is actually here today. I totally did not expect that. But if you can only hear her sing, in the next life, I can only pray for a voice like that. I'm stuck with words, just words, but I could just sing like Audrey Noether, who's sitting over there. Really, it's just such a release to listen to her, let alone how it must feel to actually sing that way. My God. So this poem was written in the 2008 downturn, moon dance. The Tao is way down. The ship of state may well be going under. Compassion has become the national anathema, and on our blood, the mosquitoes are getting plastered. Death has the upper hand as usual, and we're bushed from doing all we can to beat it. But on the deck behind the barn, after the potluck supper, the band strikes up. It's the Charlene Stomp, named for an islander we lost last summer, who boogied into her 80s. Kids, teens, their parents, oldsters are shaking their booties on grass and gravel. With my plastic egg full of seeds, I'm keeping time to lay down Sally. On this hot August night, the fire we've lit in the brazier is popping with sparks. So regardless Regardless, we're shooting our own stars. The moon is fat with gold and silver, and melted and mellow now, we let the soaring voice of our very own torch singer fly us there. Some people are an inspiration. But that's about the kind of community we have. That's the kind of community we have. And growing up a really lonely child, alone, it's just mother's milk. And here's a little one just for fun. Ode to the Mosquito, dedicated to an entomologist who comes to the island. How can I praise you, nuisance, nemesis, wielder of a nano rapier, breeder in stagnant ponds, bloodsucker, welt raiser, insidious buzz, bearer of disease? What is there to laud? Why are you here? Even entomologists are stumped, offering only that masses of you are a delectable repast for fish and bats. May they gorge the more. No, you're the great leveler. Prime ministers and public workers flee equally your scourge. You need us into humility. We can't stomp you out. And keep us guessing what in heaven your purpose might be. Because we didn't make the world. I said to someone right before the reading tonight that no one warned me that one of the greatest love affairs of my life would be with my grandchildren. This is a kind of love that is hard to even find words for. It's so big, it's so unexpected and so powerful. But this is a poem I wrote for my grandson, Liam. And it was my birthday, and he asked me what I wanted for my birthday. I said, I want to take a walk with you. He'd caught it from me, the birding bug, and wanted for half his 10 years to see an eagle here. So we headed to the end of the island. Sprier by far and sharper-eyed, he advanced down the strand as I rested on a boulder. And then he was out of sight into the woods, farther away, I think, than he'd ever ventured from any parent. I expected him to return, and waited, and waited. There's a drop-off in those woods about 30 feet, so I hobbled over rack and gravel in his direction, worried. At last I spotted him coming toward me from down the point, where, following some chittering, discreet phrases descending in tone, he'd located the eagle's eyrie. Grandma, Grandma, look! And we raised our glasses to behold the eagle, soaring and circling our island's inner pool. And immature with white mottled underwings, his primaries spread as if to extend his reach over the whole beautiful surround. Cirrus and trees, long moments of tandem reveling. I gloried in his striking out to capture his prize and his joy in sharing it with me, and prayed all this would nest in his heart and hold beyond my time on earth. During this unprecedentedly disturbing era in our country's life, and could I have a glass of water? Thank you. I've struggled to write about it, and unsuccessful a lot of the time. I'm leading an online class with some friends from Minneapolis, and we're trying to write poems about these issues and connect them to our personal experience rather than ranting ad infinitum about what's wrong. And so this is a personal connection that I made with one of those issues. Upon learning that my great-grandfather was a slave owner, when my daughter Enid gave me the gift of ancestry one year, and it took me a while to get involved, but I decided that I wanted to, thank you. I decided that I wanted to go back until I got to when my 4 grandparents' families came over to this country. When my eyes fell upon the 1795 census of his household, Andrew Cochrane, born Ireland, which recorded that 3 of its small number were slaves, I felt a jab to the crux of me. I'd assumed my ancestors were too poor to own slaves. Most of them were. And for that reason, did I think I'd be exempt? Feel less culpable? That's what I get for rummaging among the genealogies. The knowledge that my kin was complicit in history's wickedest, insupportable cruelties. The whippings and strippings. The brandings. Irons clamped around ankles and necks. The punishing, body-killing toil, for which was received no credit or benefit. The wresting of spouse from spouse, mother from child. The rapes. The absence of names. The no ways to escape. The coffles. The scurrilous insults. The auction block. The lynchings. The coffinless, unmarked graves. If I could, I would break with my race, tear out the veins that ferry this sullied blood, because how can I bear the now more intimate truth? No white hands will ever be clean of these atrocities, or for devouring the wealth and privileges they are applied to protect. I quail at the unconscious ways my path was eased by these stolen advantages. How, though they must be attempted, could any reparation be more than a paltry, ineffectual poultice against such monstrous wrongs? And then I wrote this poem called Question, which maybe you can, I hope there's some way you probably can identify with this dynamic. And I'm just struggling with it. There's no real, that's something that I don't know how about you, but something that age has brought for me is less certainty. I used to be castigated for it in the classes I took, coming to a great conclusion in my work. And now the conclusions feel frayed and uncertain, and it feels more honest, I guess. I guess I'm hopefully not needing to cling to certainties that maybe haven't actually been proven to hold water. So anyway, those are some of the struggles that I went through in writing this poem. Question. Watching the tufted titmouse, how blue almost his crowning tuft, hopping gaily through the denuded brooch, hearing as it snows the click, then the soft roar of the furnace, inhaling the sweet peppery scent of carnations in the bouquet my husband brought me just because, tasting the cheesy, buttery crunch of warm biscuits I made successfully, finally, myself, feeling soft, fresh comfort embrace my whole tired body as I slide into a clean-sheeted bed, smiling as I open my study door, newly painted pink. I put these simple pleasures up against the young man savagely beaten by those charged with protecting him, the outraged tears of his mother, against bullies urging kids they deem lame to off themselves, against the homeless young woman threatened into sex acts for bread, against the sobbing man whose home and town bombs obliterated, against the power-hungry who in their drive for power grin at the suffering their policies produce, against the calving of yet another ice shelf, against my friend who is losing her mind, against my own imminent demise, and wonder if holding to small joys is mere frivolity, a blind dishonoring of those under peril, or a wish to deny the true gravity of trouble and to distance ourselves. Does delight succumb to the undertow of such somber tides, or can it be an eminently seaworthy vessel to keep us afloat, to weather and win us through turbulence? So before I go into the new book that I brought, I'd just like to read this book, Coven, is meant to be a celebration of women, communities of women that I have been blessed to be part of, but those also of myth and history, portraits of individual women. But there's a poem here about an animal that I've never actually even seen, but this animal to me spoke of the kind of energy and mischievous energy that is feminism, that has been part of my involvement with feminism. So, skink. I like the word. I'd like to wear it and slip sleekly, swiftly in spurts, like to scamper over underherbage, follow vines to their sources, and on stubby legs, each with 3 long lovely toes, climb stems, trunks, to look at them close. I'd dart over dirt, crawl through juicy leaf layers, munching bugs, then burrow into duff for a snooze. I'd streak by weasels, streamlined in my bright yellow racing stripes, whip whap, ask how they like my larger than my body is bright blue tail. Anybody snatches it, I detach, scram, leaving them holding only wiggle waggle. Presto, it grows back, and I just flick out, stick out, and stick out my forky tongue. Some days it's hard to summon that kind of pizzazz. Anyway, this book that Jeff is going to show us images from, I guess. Where will it show? Oh, right there. That's great. That's the cover image, and that's the first poem, too. So this is one of the great, I'm sure you have these things that, I hope you do, have things that come into your life as a complete grace and blessing. We have, together, Jim and I have had a family that has been friends of ours through many different iterations. I won't go through it all, but the son of the parents that we first met turned out to live near us in Minneapolis, and he and his wife invited us out to their place in Wisconsin, just across the border. Every once in a while, we led a pretty intense life in Minneapolis, very busy, stressful at times, in a good way, because there was a lot of wonderful things going on. But being with them was such an incredible relief. These are people who don't get stressed about anything. They don't want stress, so they don't grab hold of it. The ways they were raised could have had them being super accomplished, ambitious, hard driving, whatever. No, they didn't do that. And they didn't do it defiantly. They just decided, no, we're not going to live that way. It's happier to live this other way. So being with them was a great, so wonderful. So the husband of the couple is a photographer, and he also works for the Department of Natural Resources in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. Also worked for the Nature Conservancy. And I'd like to say, as long as I've mentioned it, that all the proceeds from the sales of books tonight will go to the Nature Conservancy. We decided that we wanted this book to be a gift. And since both of us care deeply about the natural world, we wanted it to benefit that. Buy big and contribute to the Nature Conservancy. And we also, both of us, of course, were very concerned about climate change and the hard things that are happening to the environment. But we decided in our dialogue, and we didn't set out to write a book. We set out to have a dialogue between his photographs and my poetry to see what would happen to each of us as a result. And we decided that we wanted to hold up the beauty. To hold up the beauty in a worshipful way, with reverence, with awe, with delight. And so that's what we, I think, tried to do. And that doesn't mean there aren't darker tones in this, but that was our main aim. So the first poem is called Though It Can't Last, which is the title of the book. And that's the image that goes with it. The moment just after dawn, when nightmares of defection and dread, the world catches its breath, the pound yawns, blue with sky and smooth, wreaths standing at high attention along the edges. Time stretches. Do we not long to rest here, as if in a sort of cocoon, unbesieged by lists and tasks, our only job to watch the light spread, water given goose flesh by the wind, clouds protean, suggestive, flocks signing the scene in their vanishing script. I chose to read this poem, Pulsatilla is the title, because I just visited a friend who was growing some down in Connecticut. They had already reached this stage, which is after the bloom. That's how much warmer it is in Connecticut. So this was my meditation on this one. What's left when the flowering's done? When the glamorous purple bloom has withered and blown, leaving bereft tendrils that importune the wind? Is it essentially over? Bloom off the rose? But no, the tendrils are silvered and furred. A bolus emerges, seed head, fruit, all of your labors bursting into words and gestures, effects that burrow through defenses to take root, grow, burgeon, continue the cycle. So no whining, no idolization of the blossom, no shrine building for that segment only of the round. It all goes on. For now, focus on the chalice that lifted the flower over earth's altar, the underobserved, underprized sepals extending themselves, arcing with grace and bravery into the ether. next poem is called Holy Water, and some people have asked me, was this all you writing about his photographs? And the answer is no. This was me writing a poem and him going to take the photograph, which took him 3 years. He's very, very persnickety about his work, which is great. And this was about a walk we took one day, a perilous one. Holy water. Its thirst you didn't even know you had will drive you with weak knees down a steep gorge to skid on pine needles, slip on mud, on loose rock over ledges that narrow to nothing, to stare down, certain injury or death. This is the edge, where your yawning need is exposed, and you can only proceed if you entrust yourself. Allow yourself to be steadied and caught mid-fall, knowing your companion is vulnerable too. There is no other way to reach the grotto. That rock-walled alcove with its floor of rubble, where the river made a turn and withdrew. There you can stand under a great boulder covered in hanging moss, whose green filters the water trickling down over the rock, making it clean as it was at the beginning of the world. Look up, open wide, and let those drops rain on your face and into your mouth. Then you can sense the extent to which your life has been in drought. You want this quenching to extend, to cover the whole of your parched ground and make it fertile. But like most such consecrated moments, it transmutes into one of those droplets crystallized that you fondle as a talisman against doom. It just hits me that this poem sort of segues with what Jeff had to say in our service earlier about depending on each other. Hal Watson is the name of the photographer. I'm sorry I didn't mention that sooner, but he and his family, some of his family members came to visit us on Cranberry, and he was out with his camera early every morning, and one of the things he managed to find were the Indian pipes, which are so thrilling. So this poem takes a little bit of a different tack. Indian pipes, which are also known as ghost plants. Indian pipes haunt the forest floor, the darkest parts in deepest shade, like the ghosts of braves long ago slaughtered. They're white, stark against sphagnum's green and sapling spruce. You can imagine the mournful music they might make, like that of a cedar flute, to grieve the shrinking of these woods, the fewer birds, and those whose wisdom sought to preserve them. Their heads are hung, their translucent petals downturned, alabaster. I grow a lot of zinnias, and I love them. Can I ever grow enough of them? No. But this photograph of his was frustrating to me. And I wrote a first draft about it, and this is the only time he and I are very, very aligned about almost everything. He said, nope, that won't fly. That shocked me, but it was good. It was, I really trusted it coming from him because he doesn't often say something like that. So, okay, I went back to the drawing board. And he was okay with what I came up with this time. Zinnia, I dreamed, or I think I dreamed, it's a bit fuzzy, of a flower not yet fully blossomed. I could see only the undersides of its petals. Bloody frustrating. Is that all I'll ever be allowed to see, and not the full-on sun-like array of petals around a dense center, meant to presage my own wholeness? More work to be done then, before it can be said I'm fully developed. But what work? I have no clue. What if the verve that churns within me will never be completely manifest? Anguish, insupportable. But whoever really gets that? Is it unreasonable to ask? Is this half-bloomed underangle meant to help me come to terms with partial efflorescence? To show me the beauty, the poignancy of something I can't accept, and fuzzy because I can't focus on it yet? What life can ever be totally finished before death? The next poem is called Slowing, and I feel like we had a dose of it in this wonderful service we had before the reading tonight. Even a river needs to pause, though it cannot completely stop moving. Nothing that lives is ever absolutely still. But sometimes it will slow down to reflect on the trees along its banks, their lush leafage, its surface affording the trees a mirror in which to admire themselves. How could it have missed rushing past it as it wont to do? What was all that turbulence about? Those sensuous green billows leaning over the slightly undulant water so ravishingly. The bliss of being covered even with the image of such luxuriance. What was so important? Why was there such a need for speed? Let it idle for a while. Let it gather strength. A great outpouring might be required downstream. Let it just become blank, become smooth. So all it does is replicate the beauty it has been able to behold and make in this an offering of praise, since it cannot improve on what has been made by who knows what. What indeed made the waters of which it is composed, or the current that carries it along? In this lull, it wonders. It wonders. This next one is called Waiting for the Samaritan, and there was a time I was part of a community in California where we pantomimed all the characters in this parable and tried to relate to those parts in ourselves. The wounded man, the people who pass by, and the Samaritan himself, even the donkey. It was a very, very healing exercise. So this one made me think of that. Waiting for the Samaritan. Lying face down in a ditch, eyes opening only on mud, unable to move from being beaten, robbed, we feel a kind of calm, when nothing can be done, when it's no longer in the muscle to struggle or in the soul, a knowing spreads up the vanquished body from the toes. This gloom is that in which the lotus gets its footing. We love to believing the thought that a sort of light, like the first yellow spear jutting up from a root ball, will cut a door in our despair, if thought alone had power. Or could the same blade be the sudden dread awareness that no rescue comes, none ever? That truth sharp enough to undo us. But what of kindness? Stirring like spring in the hearts of those who too have known such terror. What of their hands under our bulk to lift us on to a helpful ass and its accompanying humor? What of that? Really, old thing, you look a fright. Stiff upper lip then, no? Then let's get you sorted out. Nothing can be counted on. Part of that came from the few times that I have either been the recipient or been related to the recipient of an emergency squad. Somebody here knows all about that. Humor, it's so touching. It really gets to me. At a time like that, it is really very healing. Ooh, forgot one there. You know, I think I'll just go on to the last one. To me, this is just an awesome photograph. I have no idea how he ever got this big photograph. Deltoid. There are times when, because we know, like geese, the place we're in has gone cold and darker, an arrow within us gets notched and drawn, and overwhelming the usual debate, stick it out, you'll hurt someone, you don't deserve it, it's scary, points itself to where it feels will belong. And without thinking, we release the string. Let go the dread tension, and it's aloft and soaring into the blue unknown, with cohorts joining to follow for a while the river's course. Not straight, as we've been schooled is good, but winding, then that spear will bear off, directed by what? In our deepest tissues we desire. I'd just like to end with a kind of sort of benediction type piece of work. This summer, our family went to Crete to celebrate our 50th anniversary. And before we got there, Jim and I went to Spain and Portugal, and I kept noticing something all along the route, and this was the gist of it. And I'll say that this poem is two interwoven poems. I'll read the interwoven part first, and then I'll read the whole thing. A short one. Rest can be found, though death is always in attendance, in niches carved just in the shape to embrace you. Little temporary homes, but aren't all homes temporary? To relieve the stress of travel, where you can bide for long moments. Rest can be found on a bench in a hot plaza under the shade of a blooming tamarind, in the blue velvet chair by a high window with its good reading light, looking out on a city garden, though death is always in attendance. As unguarded switchblades with long, rocky drop-offs, slippery bathtubs, graveled inclines, deadly viruses. In niches carved just in the shape to embrace you, a train seat with a solid pull-down desk, and hours of gold fields and olive trees whipping past, a rattan chair in an outdoor cafe, a slight breeze, foaming cappuccino with dark sugar and the tiniest spoon. Little temporary homes, clean sheets and a light duvet, a plate of fresh vegetables oiled and grilled, a stranger who doesn't speak your language getting you needed help. In an emergency, even the meanest WC. But aren't all homes temporary? The terrace with bougainvillea billowing magenta over its ancient walls, a bird serenading, the air redolent of hot brick and stone, the singer in a foreign tongue pouring out a passion you were too shy or afraid to voice yourself, to relieve the stress of travel, finding the earring you thought you lost 2 stops ago in the folds of a blouse, a pool, even a crowded one, in 103-degree heat, the familiar curves of the body of your beloved, where you can hide for long moments, on a balcony overlooking the sea, drinking in the exact shade of its ultramarine, its heaves and retreats before having to take your leave. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you.
We have refreshments down below. One small warning. We got 2 cartons of coffee, one decaf and one regular, but Starbucks didn't mark which coffee.